It's dry on this ridiculous thing. In particular, that tile there. That's the lake tile. Let's look at it a bit closer. There it is. That's it. Move it even closer again, Chris. No, yeah, there we go. Now we can see it. Quiet, Astrid. I'm trying to do a voiceover. Anyway, um, this video is all about how to make this beautiful lake tile. It's nice and simple. Has some nuances. It's got some nice little details which make it even better. How do you make it? Well, you start with a 30 centimeter square tile, and the request with this was it was taking up about 80% of the tile, what water was, and that it was not connected with the rest of the river system. So I just drew a kind of random shape, hoping to fit the bill, hoping to keep some of the edge intact. I don't know what percentage it was, but it was some. And then I got a drill bit, anything would have done, just to make a hole all the way through. Now, the reason for this is that the quickest way for me to cut this out was for me to pass the wire through that hole, and then cut it all out with a hot wire cutter. But yeah, so cutting that hole first. And I decided this would be a nice little rocky detail rather than this be a kind of flat body of water with a completely flat tile. So I got a random offcut and cut that at the same time as cutting the rest of it. I've got the wire at a bit of an angle, so it creates a nice slanted effect, because that's what angle cuts do. And it ended up looking like that. And then I took the offcut bits, lined it up perfectly, and just drew a rough line to the side, what the back end of that rock should look like without it overhanging the rest of the thing, and just very quickly just whipped that through the hot wire cutter to cut it out, because again, that's what hot wire cutters do. They cut. Wearing a vest, not sure what I think about that, but it was really hot when I was making this. Now, if you're thinking, despite the vest and despite all of the unhinged voiceover, that you'd still like a board, then head to goodenoughscenery.com and fill in the contact form telling me about your wildest terrain fantasies, and I'll see if I can make them come to life. Anyway, back to the build. So realigning that with that is making sure that's all looking good. And now on to doing the rocky effect. So this is the same as I've done across all of the rest of this board. And that is doing horizontal slashes, lots and lots and lots, and just allowing it to flake randomly as it flakes. And it's as simple as that, really. Then painting it is what makes the big difference with it. Now, to stick it down, I'm just using nice, simple PVA glue. So just smeared that all over once it was free of dust, and then stuck it down. Nothing complicated about that, but we do want to make sure that our surfaces are nice and clean, so that they're attached nicely. And the rock attached in the same way, just a bit of PVA glue on top. You can see I've done some work on that to make it more interesting as well. Chucked a couple of bits of 20mm foam on top, and that's just so that there's weight going all the way through. Look at that, 15 kilos of weight going on it. Crazy. A nice little slap there just to remind myself that I'm a man. What the hell am I talking about? The base color is black paint with PVA glue, so I did that across the entirety of the thing. Just kind of gave up halfway because I didn't need to film myself doing that. So did that all over, and then did some grey dry brushing on top, and then some white, as I've done across the rest of it. I'm not going to go over that because I've gone over that in the other videos. And I had this green aquary cool paint. I decided I should do a couple of coats of that at the bottom, just to give it a bit more colour and interest. The edges I went round with UV resin, and this is to stop any epoxy resin, which we'll be pouring in a bit, leaking out underneath of the foam. So just all the way around the edge, and then setting that with the UV resin torch, or UV light as it's often known. Now, as I've shown you on the previous things, this is magnetized, so a couple of holes and magnets glued in there, and a bit of flock put on top. And then it was time to flock the top of it. So just going across the entirety of this with glue, just to be able to set the things in place. And there's one section Mark requested was attached to the modular system, so that's that bit there. And the rest of it is just the same green flock that I've used across the entirety of the rest of the board. So just sprinkling it all around the edges. Doesn't matter if it goes into the lake, you can get it out afterwards, but I'm trying my best to make sure that it does not. Then I decided to make some lily pads. So I got some artificial leaves from a plant that was just hanging around in my house, and then just hole punched it a lot So punch, 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 stack of about 5 of them, and that created these little lily pad things, which I don't think I show particularly clearly, but you can see in the kind of closer up thing of the video later on. There you go, look, lily pads, absolutely, absolutely perfect. So I made a whole bunch of them. Nice and simple. The bottom of the lake needed to look more like the bottom of a lake, so I've got 2 different grades of gravel. This has just been reclaimed from the road, literally. Got a video on that. So finer stuff all the way up to the edges of everything, and then some thicker stuff in a few places as well. And I think that ended up looking like I wanted it to. So, you know, anyway, you want it to look a bit shallower, you have more stuff, and anyway, you want it to look deeper, you'd put nothing at all, and you could have it black at the bottom to try and make it give the illusion of depth. Now, what I'm doing here is failing to use scissors, as often happens, so I'm using left-handed, and I don't know how to use scissors very well, but I'm cutting up this kind of weed stuff that I've used for vines. I use that on the waterfall in a future video. So that's good stuff. That just, yeah, trimmed into little pieces, and then I'm just kind of deciding where that might have grown. No real thought. I'm not a marine biologist or a lake biologist or any biologist for that matter. And then sprinkled the lily pads randomly as well. I got some coarser green stuff that you might put on trees if you're doing fake trees, but I just kind of sprinkled that in as well. And then I used the remaining resin in these bottles, so I just mixed that by tipping it all in. Add some of this plasmatic bolt paint. Just a few drips of that is enough. If you're mixing paint into resin to color it, you would be astounded how little you need. So, you know, this is a contrast paint, which is not really the best paint to use, but it worked. And yes, stir that in, follow the instructions, and job will be a good one. Now, I've been told before that I don't spend long enough showing resin pours. So I think people quite like them. So there's nothing particularly complicated about this. Just tip it in. The lighter stuff like the grass and the reeds are going to get moved around, and you can move them back around later on. But just being careful, making sure you're you know, just enjoying the process, because this is one of the fun parts of it. Yeah, one of the big things I'd say is when you pour resin, one of the reasons it can end up not setting on the top properly is if you scrape the edges of your container afterwards. So tip it all out by all means, but do not start scraping the edges, because that's where the unmixed stuff ends up kind of adhering to. So don't do that. And here you can see I've got some tweezers here, and I'm just picking and moving bits of the reeds around just to go back roughly where I thought they might look good. I think I draped some on top of the rock and stuff just to make it a bit more interesting. But yeah, obviously do this before it sets. And I do absolutely nothing about bubbles. I just let bubbles be bubbles because water has bubbles in it, and I think it looks cool. Obviously, I want loads, but no, and if you just do it properly, then loads don't happen anyway. And then to finish off the top, using a Vallejo diorama water texture, cover the surface, and then stipple it just so it, you know, you could believe it is flat and very shiny, and it did look very cool like that. But to fit in with the rest of the aesthetic of the board, it would be best if I matched that up with just some stippling of that, and it ended up looking really cool, as you can see in the next video here. And there it is on the completed board. You can see the little lily pad things floating. You can see the deeper parts. You can see the less deep parts. You can see the reeds and the rocks and all the beautiful texture of it. And you can see it matching up with the rest of the board. And here's a dramatic flyover of the entire thing. See the lake there on the left there next to the hill, the one that looks like the lake. If you want a board like this, or maybe a smaller one, please don't make me make one this big again. Then head to goodenoughscenery.com. If you want to support the channel, then head to patreon.com/goodenoughscenery, where you can support this insanity for as little as $2 a month. But yeah, get me to make your board. Give me something interesting to do. Catch you for another video soon.